It is our pleasure to have Professor Hans Ladegard, one of our educators, to give us a lecture.
Please, Professor Ladegard.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to be here. I think this is my third or fourth, I can't remember, annual public speaking contest, and it's always a great pleasure. And I've really enjoyed the speeches and the poetry recitals I've heard tonight. It's been a great pleasure to be here. And thanks to the Language Center staff, they've gone to a great deal of trouble because I'm so difficult. I want a mic so that I can walk around because I don't like standing behind a microphone. So thank you for giving that to me. I really appreciate that. It's hard, of course, to talk about public speaking after so many wonderful examples just being delivered. And arguably, you should have heard this before you gave your speeches. But that doesn't mean that what you did right now wasn't great, fantastic, and something that I thoroughly enjoyed. But these are just some of my personal do's and don'ts. That doesn't mean that they're not written in stone. So, I mean, you can disagree with them if you like. And I think, more than anything, it's advice. As the Dean said when he gave his speech to begin with, public speaking is tremendously important. It's so important because it's your impression, it's a first-hand impression of you when you meet somebody, whether it's a job interview, whether it's a conference where you have to give a speech, whether it's in your class, you have to present something. Public speaking is tremendously important. The first thing that I'd like to mention is if you have a choice and you can pick your own topic, you should pick something that really interests you, something you feel passionate about. The topics I put up there are not fictional. They're real topics that I've heard either in class from students who could pick their own topic or in public speaking contests where I've been adjudicating. So my favorite chocolate, I thought when I first saw that a student wanted to talk about that would be difficult to be passionate about. She was passionate, but in my opinion, not as passionate as she could have been if you had perhaps talked about something which was slightly more important in general. My dog, yes, if you care a lot about your dog, this could be a topic that you could be very passionate about. But I do think, if we move down the list, I think that it's probably easier to be more passionate about some of the last topics, which I think your talks tonight have demonstrated. What I like about One Direction, it wasn't One Direction, but I couldn't remember which band it was, so I just picked One Direction. This was somebody who really liked this particular band and did talk about it with great passion, but I did think that the personal commitment perhaps was difficult to put into that particular speech. The next two, I think, were excellent speeches because Breathing Space in Hong Kong, a remnant from the past, is good because there are two issues. Breathing space is both the environment, the pollution, but also the fact that Hong Kong is very congested. So it was sort of possible for the speaker to put in two different topics under one heading. Discourse, Diplomacy and Democracy, a post-occupied view, that's one that I heard very recently that I thought was very good. I like the alliteration in discourse, diplomacy and democracy. And I also like the idea that somebody could reflect critically, optimistically also in this case, about recent events in Hong Kong and about the future. Okay, but just remember, if you are bored, if you're not into your topic, if you're not passionate about it, your audience will probably be bored too. But if you communicate interest, passion, commitment, then you communicate that to your audience, and they are likely to care more about what you have to say. And do remember that good speeches are not just informative, they're also persuasive. Your job is to persuade. Your job is to come across as a trustworthy person who is persuasive in what he or she is saying. That's what you want to do when you go for your first job interview. That's what you do if you're in a classroom one day and you have a group of students in front of you. You want to be persuasive in what you're doing. You want to sell, as it were, what you're trying to convince the students or the panel or whoever you're talking to, what you're trying to convince them of. Okay, something about your self-presentation. We can all do something. I know some of us perhaps find it difficult to be free, to let go, to forget where you are right now, but try as much as you can to be free and to be natural. And I thought, again, we saw some excellent examples tonight. One way to do it is to not depend too much on your notes. if you have to read all the time from your notes or from your PowerPoint slides, it's difficult to be free and to be natural. So I think that's a good thing. Secondly, don't over-rehearse. For many years, I've had students, secondary school students, coming in for interviews for non-JUPAS applicants. And I sometimes get these, it's like you press a button and you have a recital. It's sort of, and that's not what we want. We want to hear something that's natural, something that comes across as natural and convincing, not like a pre-rehearsed speech that somebody has been practicing and practicing and practicing before they come in. So be spontaneous if you can. If something happens, something you hadn't anticipated, try to just be spontaneous and natural about it and make a joke perhaps about it if that's possible. Control your nervousness. I thought you did a great job of that tonight. Sometimes you can see and sometimes you can hear students being very sort of visibly nervous, and that doesn't give a good impression. I know that it's hard for us, some of us, to do it, and it's more difficult for some than for others, but I do think it's important that you try to rehearse that as much as you can, not rehearse, but control that as much as you can. You can do that by thinking through what you want to say and how. And I think, and that's a good trick that I've always used from my very first public speech, you identify somebody in the audience that is attentive, somebody that gives feedback, somebody that is awake, somebody you get cues from. And usually, personally for me, it's always a woman in the first row. For two reasons, not because I prefer to look at women, but because women tend to be more expressive and to be more responsive. They tend to, it's a fact, it's not a joke. We know from social linguistics that women tend to give much more non-verbal feedback. They tend to nod more, they tend to smile more, they tend to appreciate more, and give that kind of verbal feedback that men are often, you're much more likely to get the brick wall. If you look at a man. So maybe find an attentive woman in the first row and look at her. Okay, your body language, look at the audience. This is something that perhaps some of you tonight could have done a little bit better. Look at the audience, look them in the eyes. When I did teacher training many years ago when I was an assistant professor, they just passed a new law in Denmark that assistant professors had to do teacher training. So I had in my classroom, every time I taught, I had somebody observing me and making comments, and this long list of comments. And I remember one of my external examiners said to me, look them in the eyes. Every time you come into the classroom, you look them in the eyes, because if they don't understand what you're saying, you can see it in their eyes. And he's right. He's right. I've never forgotten that. And I try to do that. Look your audience in the eyes. If they're not with you, if you've lost them, you can see it in their eyes. If they're bored, falling asleep, you'll notice. If they're on the mobile phones, you'll notice. So look them in the eyes and see if they've understood what you've said. Smile. That's an important thing as well, because you communicate something when you smile. Don't overdo it. That's, of course, the extreme. That's what I call the Carrie Lam effect. Our chief secretary, I think, is always like this. When she's on the news, maybe it's because she always has something unpleasant to say, and she's trying to sugarcoat it by smiling. But I think excessive smiling seems suspicious, because you wonder, why is it that she's always smiling so much all the time? Maybe she's trying to sell a message that she doesn't really believe in. I don't know. But anyway, smile, but don't overdo it. Use appropriate body language. Some of you might have heard this, but researchers believe that gesture is instantaneous thought. So because our words are a little bit behind, we don't actually speak as fast as we could. Our words are a little bit behind. So what we do when we use gesture appropriately is that you can actually anticipate what I'm going to say next if you look at my hands. Because my hands are slightly ahead of my words. So use it appropriately. Don't just do, the mechanical, some people know that they have to do gestures, so they do this, every once in a while. That doesn't work. But if you use it appropriately, it can actually be very helpful for people, because they can anticipate what you're going to say next. Movement. I mean, some people like to move around like myself, but I've also had, in student evaluations, I've had comments like, for goodness sake, sit down. So I I know this varies. I like people who move around. Again, it makes it much easier to get in touch with your audience and to communicate with your audience, not just the people at the front row, but also the people at the back. Articulate it clearly. That is very, very important. Speech rate should be appropriate, not too slowly and not too quickly. Speaking too quickly isn't good, but speaking too slowly, that isn't great either. I don't know if you're watching TVB News. One of the speakers there, Sonia Otario, she's driving me crazy because she speaks so incredibly slowly, and then she has a very strange intonation. So that combination of a very sort of extremely up and down intonation and speaking very slowly can actually be very irritating. But it's also, if you speak too quickly, which I tend to do, I often get that in my student evaluations, to slow down. And try to find the balance, not too quickly, not too slowly. Note the last point. A good speech has everything to do with articulation and nothing to do with accent. Nothing to do with accent. Of course, that's my personal opinion, and I know that not everybody agrees. But I think, I'm a sociolinguist, so that should come as no surprise to anybody, that a Hong Kong English accent is as appropriate, as adequate, and as useful as any other accent of English, including standard British English, standard American English, Australian English, whatever you might want to speak. You need to feel good about your language, and if somebody, your teacher or your parents or whatever, have told you that your language is not appropriate, it's not accurate, it's not right, you don't feel good about how you speak. And I think in order to do a good job as a presenter, as a public speaker, you need to feel good about your language. One of my favorite examples of this is one of my colleagues. When I was director of the double degree program, we sent colleagues to schools in Hong Kong to observe, and one of our students went to a secondary school and one of my colleagues went with him to observe. And it was a computer class, and the teacher said to the students repeatedly, "Don't say computer, it's not computer, it's computer." So what's the difference between computer and computer? The only difference is that one signals a local identity, a Hong Kong English identity, word, the other doesn't. But in terms of intelligibility, they're equally good. It's not more correct or appropriate to say computer than to say computer. So don't be ashamed of the way you speak. The important thing is that you articulate clearly so that people can hear, can understand what you're saying. And the last point, don't apologize for your language. The reason I put that in was a couple of weeks ago, I was interviewing in the international office, we were interviewing outgoing exchange students. And each and every one of them, almost, apologized for their language and said, "I'm sorry, I know my English is not very good. This is a terrible introduction. If you want to come in for an interview, you want to convince the panel that we should give you money so that you can go overseas to study. And then your first comment is, "I'm sorry, my English is not very good. Why should we give you a grant if you don't think that your English is very good?" A grant to go to usually Britain, Europe, America to study. So don't apologize for your language. Try to believe in yourself and to come across as convincing in what you do. In terms of content, don't cram in too much information. I'm always thinking that when I go to conferences, and I'm sure those of you, my colleagues who go to conferences, you have exactly the same experience. Scholars who want to present, a PhD in 15 minutes is impossible. So what people do is they cram in way too much information, but trying to say too much in too little time will have an adverse impact on your message. People don't get it, they don't understand it. So don't do that. Try and reduce, cut down, take out bits and pieces that are more important than others and focus on those bits and pieces. Make a few clear points and support them with relevant evidence. Same is true of your PowerPoint slides. Sometimes you have tiny little, scripts, and you have so much information in the slide and nobody can read it. So don't put too much information in your PowerPoint slides. Clear points, short messages on each slide would be best. And also don't follow them. divergent if you need to, make a comment, make a joke, whatever, so that people don't get bored. And finally, make sure there's room for you. You as a person, you have to put your own fingerprint on your talk, your speech. Be yourself. Be happy. Be bubbly if you're a bubbly person. Who's got something on his or her mind. Heart, maybe. Yeah, a message from the heart is always a better message. I think something that is important to you. Something where the audience can tell that this is something that you care about. Something that's important to you. Something you want to share. Dare to be different. It's risky not to follow the script, but it's usually much better than following a rigid framework. Angela Goddard said about advertising, I'm teaching a course on language, communication and advertising at the moment. Angela Goddard has said in the language of advertising, she said, keeping themselves talked about is the main aim of adverts. I would then say, keeping itself talked about is the main aim of your speech. If somebody can talk about your speech tomorrow, or even tonight, somebody can remember when they leave this room what you said, you've done a good job. If everybody has forgotten completely, totally, then maybe you could have done a better job. Keeping itself talked about is the main aim of your speech. What can you talk about that people will remember later tonight or tomorrow? So make it memorable, interesting, funny, serious, whatever, or just different. And I think I'm going to skip this because it's going to take an additional 5 minutes, and we don't want that, right, Jesse? Stop here, right? Okay? Okay. Then I want to conclude by what I consider. I looked, at the internet for a while, and I thought, I want to find a great speech. And I found one that I thought was really, really good. Because at the time when Barack Obama gave his speech to the Democratic National Convention in Boston, I think it was in 2004, he was an unknown entity. Nobody knew him. Virtually nobody in the party, and certainly nobody in America knew about him. So this is what people refer to as a groundbreaking speech. What he did in that speech, as you'll see in a minute, he established common ground. He put himself in a context, introduced himself in a very inventive way. I'm sure you can remember it, how he introduced himself by introducing his parents and how different they were from the average American. And yet, his point was, if I can make it, you can make it. If I can make it, everybody can make it. He uses stories, anecdotes about himself, about other people he's met. He repeats himself a lot, not to the point that you get tired of it, but just repetition to make his point. He uses antithesis, as we call it, not this, but that, which again helps us to remember what it is he was actually going to say. He uses a lot of gesture, but also energy. You can sort of tell when you watch it that there's a lot of energy in him. There's also a lot of appeal and sincerity, and certainly, first and foremost, persuasion. So I want to conclude with that, and let's have a look at a little bit of Barack Obama's speech.
Barack Obama in 2004 was totally unknown. People were saying, I don't know who this guy is. I wonder why they picked him.
He had this reputation as a bit of an upstart, as sort of a young, rising figure in the party, but no one knew who this guy was. This was his chance to introduce himself to people.
Tonight is a particular honor for me because, let's face it, my presence on this stage is pretty unlikely. My father was a foreign student, born and raised in a small village in Kenya.
What makes a great political speech is if you can somehow fold your story into this larger American story.
The next thing he says is about his mother's family. His grandfather fought in World War II. He used the GI Bill. They settled in Kansas, so white people could say, he's just like us.
My parents shared not only an improbable love, they shared an abiding faith in the possibilities of this nation. I stand here knowing that my story is part of the larger American story, that I owe a debt to all of those who came before me, and that in no other country on earth is my story even possible.
Going into this speech, we've had 4 years of George Bush, and we felt as a country like we've grown further apart.
04 was very much a divisive partisan race. Obama's speech is in some ways an antidote to that.
Alongside our famous individualism, there's another ingredient in the American saga, a belief that we're all connected as one people. If there's a child on the south side of Chicago who can't read, that matters to me even if it's not my child. If there's a senior citizen somewhere who can't pay for their prescription drugs and having to choose between medicine and the rent, that makes my life poorer even if it's not my grandparent. It is that fundamental belief, I am my brother's keeper, I am my sister's keeper, that makes this country work. E pluribus unum, out of many, one.
He gives a speech that presages his entire political message of 2008, which is this sort of post-partisan argument.
Now, even as we speak, there are those who are preparing to divide us. The spin masters, the negative ad peddlers, who embrace the politics of anything goes. Well, I say to them tonight, there is not a liberal America and a conservative America. There is the United States of America.
Obama was born with two great gifts. One is his mind, and the other is his ability to speak to large groups of people.
There are three things that Obama does that really makes that speech effective. He wants concrete detail. He likes story, and he loves antithesis, the use of repetition and structure to show contrast. There is not a liberal America or a conservative America. There is one America.
There is not a black America and a white America and Latino America and Asian America. There's the United States of America. The pundits like to slice and dice our country into red states and blue states, but I've got news for them too. We worship an awesome God in the blue states, and we don't like federal agents poking around in our libraries in the red states. We coach Little League in the blue states, and yes, we've got some gay friends in the red states. We are one people, all of us pledging allegiance to the Stars and Stripes, all of us defending the United States of America.
The way he uses his hands, he actually points a lot and does a lot of this, and a lot of this, and a lot of that.
In doing so, he gives off this sense of energy. I am new, I'm someone who is dynamic.
And he doesn't do that so much anymore. He's a little more solemn and reserved when he gives speeches today, but I think it's more reflective of his office.
In the end, that's what this election is about. Do we participate in a politics of cynicism, or do we participate in a politics of hope? It's the hope of slaves sitting around a fire singing freedom songs. The hope of immigrants setting out for distant shores. The hope of a young naval lieutenant bravely patrolling the Mekong Delta. The hope of a mill worker's son who dares to defy the odds. The hope of a skinny kid with a funny name who believes that America has a place for him too. Hope in the face of difficulty. Hope in the face of uncertainty. The audacity of hope.
His appearance at that convention, which was the best speech of the convention, better than John Kerry's, was electrifying, and without it, he wouldn't be president.
I think sincerity means a lot. There are people who, when they speak the truth as they see it, and they're very effective doing that.
I believe this country will reclaim its promise, and out of this long political darkness, a brighter day will come. Thank you very much, everybody. God bless you.
Right, something to aim for. Thank you very much for your patience, and good luck with the results.